Hi everyone! Today I wanted to make a slightly different type of video, where I basically just draw a picture of Galadriel and talk to you a little bit about Lord of the Rings. I much more prefer the traditional methods of drawing and making art. I just wanted to entertain you a bit with what you can hear and hopefully also a bit with what you can see. Just know that this is not really an art video, it's just more of a rant video with random art happening in the background. Some of you will know that I mentioned an AMA video in my posts, and that will be coming in the future at some point, but for now this video is just going to be my thoughts on Lord of the Rings, other Tolkien's works, how I got into it, and so on. So for this casual video, and after this long intro, I invite you all to get all nice and cozy in your hobbit holes, or in your dwarven halls or elven realms, wherever you may hail from. Grab a cup of tea, some lembas bread, maybe even potatoes, and let's go. As cliché as it may sound, Lord of the Rings has always been a big part of my life. As an introvert who never socialized much and preferred the company of her own thoughts, books and movies were always my escape. And I have to start with the movies because those were my introduction to Tolkien's world. I remember The Fellowship as my first proper film, and also my first introduction to English, actually, along with Harry Potter. I don't remember when I first saw Lord of the Rings, how old I was, but I do know that my parents let me watch it when I was pretty young, which was really great because it fueled my imagination and sparked my passion for fantasy, while allowing me to also casually learn English without even knowing that I was learning it. The Lord of the Rings trilogy for a little kid was very exciting, but also pretty bloody. My child self didn't seem to mind it though. In fact, The Two Towers remains my favorite film from the three. Why? I'm not sure. I think the second movie has great pacing and overall the story is always interesting and keeps you on your toes. The Fellowship is wonderful for establishing the world and the characters, though a bit uneventful for my taste, if I have to criticize it. And the battle in The Return of the King tends to drag on a bit, as do the notorious numerous endings. Now, this is in no way a criticism, but if I have to be nitpicky and say what I like and what I dislike, here's some of the things. I really prefer the Battle of Helm's Deep as opposed to the Siege of Gondor and the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Now, don't get me wrong, the battle and the Rohirrim charge and all of that is really epic. Theoden's speech is unforgettable and the Rohan theme is one of the most iconic movie scores in my opinion. It strikes all the right chords. But the Battle of Helm's Deep is just so raw and real, and I think the fact that it's dark and pouring with rain really adds to the effect. You just have that huge army of terrifying Uruk-hai marching menacingly towards Helm's Deep. It's bone-chilling every time I see it, and I never get tired of it. Just the preparations for the battle, where they go recruiting all those old men and young boys who can barely hold a sword. You really get a proper sense of how dire the situation is. And on a lighter note, let's say that shield surfing Legolas is slightly less of a sin than elephant climbing Legolas, maybe? Speaking of the second movie, I think I also like it a lot because we get introduced to Rohan. I love their culture, probably more than Gondor's culture, and maybe because the Rohirrim are more fleshed out, at least in the movies, than the Gondorians. Because in Gondor, yes, you have Faramir and Denethor, but I feel like the focus is more on the battle there. In Rohan, you have this gradual introduction to many characters and to the culture, which is an aspect that I really love. We get to look a little bit more into the culture and not so much just, okay, here's the war, let's fight now. With all of this in mind, I think it should come as no surprise that Éowyn has always been my favorite character. Arwen was a bit too ethereal for my taste since as a child I was a bit of a tomboy at heart, though I never was in appearance. And Galadriel was not in the movies enough to make an impression on the young me, I guess. But I can definitely appreciate these lovely characters much more now that I'm older. But yeah, I love Éowyn not just because of her awesome scene on the battlefield, but also because of her character arc. How she's both independent and strong, and fights for the ideals and people she loves, yet on the other hand she's also vulnerable. I love rewatching the movies because I tend to see so much more now than I could as a child, obviously. But yes, when you watch a timeless story at different stages of your life, you tend to see it from a different perspective at every stage, which is wonderful since it's like discovering something new within the old. So yeah, I became a movie fan at an early age, and then basically it wasn't until high school when I read the Silmarillion. I read a translation though, because English is just not available at our library for whatever reason. And in the translation, the style is a bit archaic, which is not in a good way, but I fell in love with the story nonetheless, and I admire how detailed Tolkien's world building is. I admire the richness of the lore and the beautifully vast, as well as intimidatingly large, fictional world that came into existence from his imagination. Since then, I've read the Silmarillion a few times, more so in order to brush up on my knowledge, but also because I love getting immersed into that rich fictional world that is almost like some alternative reality, or, well, history, mythology, as it is. But yeah, this is my favorite thing. Fiction constructed in such detail that you in fact have to study it, like real history, in order to understand all the intricacies of it. As a linguist, I greatly admire Tolkien taking the time and effort to construct languages of the peoples of Middle-earth. It comes across almost as a trivial detail, because how many writers nowadays say, I'm going to write some fiction, but before I can write anything, I need to create a language and the culture and the history. It takes so much effort for such a relatively small detail, but it's an immensely important one because it really breathes in a different level of life to the fiction. It truly reflects how serious Tolkien was about his task as a writer. He was literally a creator, a godlike figure, constructing his world. It's just awesome. I've also read The Hobbit, but as far as the Lord of the Rings books go, I've always remained just a movie fan. I know, come at me. But hey, never say never. Let me know some of the cool details about the trilogy that are in the books, but not in the movies. I know about a few changes, for example, how Arwen is a lot different in the movies than she is in the books, how Jackson changed her character quite a lot so that she would have a bigger role to play in the movies. But yeah, let me know your favorite thing that's in the books, but not in Jackson's movies. The Hobbit was okay, but Silmarillion is really the book to get a comprehensive idea of Tolkien's legendarium, in my opinion. The creation of Arda is so cool, and all the Valar and their powers, I could always picture it so vividly. Then of course, the story of the Silmarils and the tale of Beren and Luthien. Come on, if you wanted to adapt something from before the Third Age, I think this could be a good choice. Now granted, it would probably be difficult to anchor it into the timeline and establish the connection with the Lord of the Rings if you wanted to make a strong point of them existing in the same fictional universe. But I think since it's a story with a clear focus, it would be a better choice for a series or a movie than the very ambitious feat of trying to adapt a really huge portion of the Second Age for the silver screen. Now, I got a bit carried away with the Silmarillion. The title of this video is Lord of the Rings, so I guess let's go back a little to the other two movies. Among the other things I love in The Fellowship is the prologue. I think it's so strong and does a wonderful job of covering so much history in a really effective way. Then the introduction to the Shire is just so lovely and heartwarming, and just like the Rohan theme, the Shire theme is also unforgettable. Also, one of the strongest moments, I think, is just the Fellowship setting off on their journey. You see that scene and you just know it's going to be epic. And in The Return of the King, the ending, it's really beautiful, even though I said it drags on a bit, but the ending is a lovely ending to the trilogy. Aragorn's coronation with the hobbits standing there, and you know which scene I'm talking about. It's lovely.
You bow to no one.
The entire trilogy is such an experience. I don't think you ever just watch it. There's always a sense of admiration. Even if it is a casual watching or rewatching, it's never a casual experience, I think. So let me end this on a fun fact, or maybe you won't find it fun, I don't know. At 18, I got this tattoo of Arwen's necklace, and I think you can tell by it that I'm primarily a Lord of the Rings movie fan, since this piece of jewelry is a movie thing, not a book thing. Now, this in and of itself may not be a fun fact, but perhaps you'll find this more interesting. I had to wait about half a year to get the tattoo done, and actually the date that I got for it was exactly on the 2nd of September, which I think is quite interesting. But believe it or not, no one's ever recognized this tattoo except for one person. There were some who thought, oh yeah, it looks familiar, but apparently it's either not that great of a tattoo to be recognizable enough, or I need to surround myself with more Lord of the Rings fans. But in any case, the meaning behind this tattoo for me is not only love, but also hope and a silver lining. Something to remind me that even the dark times will pass. And yeah, I'm ending this on a cliche again. Great. Well, there we go. Galadriel's portrait is done, and so is my rant. I hope you enjoyed coming along on this journey, so please let me know in the comments how you came to love Lord of the Rings. Share your favorite scenes or book quotes, of course, and I'll see you soon.